My wife cheated on me with her boss, then took $250, $0 from our joint account and filed for divorce to claim the house. And now she's secretly planning to sell my family's inherited land worth over $1 million behind my back. I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here I am. Honestly, the whole thing feels like something straight out of a bad movie, except it's real life and it's my life. The most shocking part: the moment I found out my wife, Sarah, was cheating on me with her boss, David, and not just cheating. She was secretly stealing from us, taking $250, $0 out of our joint account, and now she's trying to sell off my family's inherited land worth over $1 million behind my back. Yeah, it's a lot to process, but I'll start from the beginning. Sarah and I had been married for 6 years. We met in college, fell hard, got married right after I finished grad school, and for the most part things seemed good. She was beautiful, confident, and seemed like she had her life together. I was proud of her, proud of us. We had a pretty normal life. Good jobs, a nice house, a little savings. I thought we were solid. But you know how sometimes little things start to change and you don't realize the storm is coming until it's too late. It started subtly. She'd get more defensive about her phone, hide it more than usual. She'd come home late from work, say she was working late, but I'd catch her in little lies. At first, I thought she was just stressed or busy. She'd snap at me for asking questions, call me paranoid. She'd say, "Stop being so insecure," or "You're just imagining things." But I knew better. Then I noticed her phone bill had strange numbers and she'd delete texts right in front of me. One night I decided to check her phone when she went to the bathroom. I didn't plan to snoop, but I was curious. And what I found froze me in place. There were messages between her and David, her boss, flirty, suggestive, talking about meeting up after work, making plans. Nothing explicit at first, but enough to tell me that something was definitely going on. I saw her talking about how tired she was, needing a break, and him replying with, "I can make you feel better." That was the moment I knew this wasn't just work stress. It was something more. I was sick. My stomach dropped. My mind raced. I felt betrayed, humiliated. I kept looking at those messages, trying to make sense of it all. I felt stupid for not noticing sooner, for trusting her so blindly. How long had this been going on? Were they sleeping together? How far had it gone? I couldn't sleep that night. I kept going over everything. Every sign, every little lie she told, every time she brushed me off. It all clicked into place now. The next day I confronted her. I sat her down, showed her the messages. She looked surprised at first, then angry. She started to lie, of course. Said it was just a fling, that David was her mentor, and she didn't mean for it to go this far. She claimed I was overreacting, that I was insecure, that I was imagining things. She said she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me, and that I was paranoid because I was insecure about her. Success at work, but I knew better. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she avoided eye contact, the way her voice cracked when she lied. That confrontation left me devastated. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe the woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, was capable of this. All those years, all those memories suddenly felt like they meant nothing. I was furious, heartbroken, and confused. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me like this? I kept replaying the moment over and over in my head, trying to understand what I did wrong, what I missed, why I wasn't enough. But beneath all that, there was this growing anger. Anger at her, at David, at the whole situation. I realized I couldn't just brush this off or pretend it didn't happen. I had to do something. I started to think about how to handle this, how to get my life back on track. I was hurt, but I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. Not without consequences. I needed to find out how deep this went, how much she'd stolen, what she was planning next. That's when I started digging into our finances more thoroughly. I discovered that she'd taken $250, $0 from our joint account over the past few months, money we'd saved for a house, for our future. She'd been funneling it into secret accounts, I later found out. I felt like I'd been punched again. All my plans, our dreams, shattered in an instant. She was planning to divorce me, claiming the house, and I knew she was already scheming to sell off my family's land, land that's been in my family for generations, worth over $1 million. All of it could disappear behind her back if I didn't act fast. The thing is, I never thought I'd be the guy dealing with this kind of betrayal. I thought I knew my wife. Turns out, I didn't know anything. I feel like I'm living in some twisted nightmare, but I know I have to face it head on. I'm just trying to figure out what my next move should be, how to protect what's mine, and how to deal with the pain of knowing the woman I loved was capable of this level of deception. It's a lot, too. Process, and honestly, I don't have all the answers yet. But I do know one thing. I'm not going down without a fight. After I uncovered all of this, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My head was spinning, and every time I thought I had a grip on what was happening, something new would blow the whole thing up again. I knew I had to act fast, especially with her plans to divorce me and sell off the family land. That land isn't just some property. It's part of my heritage, something I grew up knowing was ours. If she manages to sell it without me knowing, I'd lose everything my family worked for over generations. I couldn't let that happen. The first thing I did was dig into her phone and email accounts. I wanted to find out exactly how deep this betrayal went. I found bank statements, hidden accounts, and even some shady emails where she was discussing the sale of the land behind my back. She'd already contacted a real estate agent, someone she'd never mentioned before, and was trying to set up a showing without my knowledge. That was the moment I realized she was serious about cutting me out completely. She thought she could just go behind my back, sell the land, and walk away with the money, leaving me with nothing. I also found out she'd been secretly withdrawing money from our joint account for months, small amounts at first, then larger sums. It added up to that $250, $0 I mentioned earlier. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to do that, especially while pretending everything was fine. I felt betrayed, but I also felt furious. I started to piece together her entire plan, and it made my blood boil. The next step was to get legal advice. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in property and family law. I needed to understand my rights and what I could do to stop her from selling the land or at least protect my interest in it. My lawyer told me that I had a strong case to halt any sale, especially since I was able to prove I was unaware of her plans and that she was acting without my consent. But it wasn't just about stopping her. I wanted to make her pay for what she'd done. I wanted to make her understand that betrayal has consequences. Meanwhile, I kept watching her every move. She'd get more aggressive, more bitchy, trying to gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. She'd say things like, "You're just paranoid," or "You're making this into a bigger deal than it is," whenever I confronted her. But I didn't back down. I kept pressing her, demanding answers. I knew she was lying. Her stories kept changing. One minute she said she was just having an affair with David because she was unhappy. The next, she claimed it was just a fling, that she'd never meant for it to ruin everything. But I could see through her bullshit. Her eyes would dart around, her voice would crack, and her excuses got more ridiculous. One night, I caught her trying to access her secret accounts again. I snuck into her email and saw her trying to delete some correspondence with the real estate agent. She was panicked, frantic almost. That's when I realized she knew I was onto her and she was scared. She started to threaten me, saying I had no proof, that she could sell the land without me knowing, and that she'd make sure I got nothing. That was a wake-up call. The stakes were higher than I thought. I decided I had to confront her directly. I told her I knew everything, that she was planning to sell the land behind my back and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She tried to deny it at first, then got defensive, saying I was just jealous or insecure. She threw in some classic lines about how I was overreacting, how she loved me but needed space, and that I was just making things worse. But I wasn't buying it. I told her I'd already spoken to a lawyer, that I was going to put a stop to her plans and that she better come clean. Her reaction was priceless. She got angry, saying I was ruining everything, that I was a paranoid idiot, and that I didn't understand how hard she was working to provide for us. She said she was just trying to get ahead, that she deserved better than a guy who was snooping through her stuff. I just looked at her and said, "You've been caught, Sarah, and I'm not leaving this alone. You're not selling that land, not while I'm still standing." The anger, the betrayal, the sense of helplessness, it all hit me at once. I felt like I was fighting for my life, for what's rightfully mine, and for my family's legacy. Now I'm sitting here still trying to process everything, trying to figure out what's next. I've got a lawyer, I've got evidence, and I'm more determined than ever to protect what's mine. But honestly, I don't know how much more I can take. Every time I think I've got a handle on this, something else pops up. Another lie, another scheme, another betrayal. It's like I'm caught in some twisted game I never signed up for. All I know is I won't let her get away with it. I've got to stay one step ahead, and I have to be prepared for whatever she throws at me next. After I got everything laid out, lawyers consulted, evidence gathered, her plans exposed, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally saw the full scope of her betrayal, and dread because I knew this wasn't over. Sarah was cornered now, and her true colors were showing more every day. She was furious, trying to gaslight me even more, claiming I was overreacting, that I didn't understand her struggles, that I was just jealous of her success. But I wasn't buying any of her lies anymore. I knew exactly what she was doing, and I was determined to stop her. I decided I had to take more control. I had to get ahead of her next move, which meant being proactive. So I set up surveillance on the house, nothing invasive, just enough to catch her sneaking around or making shady calls. I also started documenting everything, her emails, her phone activity, even her conversations when she didn't know I was listening. I knew she was planning to do something drastic, and I had to be ready. One night, I caught her trying to contact the real estate agent again, this time in person. She was meeting him at a coffee shop nearby. I decided to follow her discreetly. Watching her sit across from that agent, I realized she was dead serious about selling the land. She didn't even try to hide how eager she was. It made my stomach churn. I knew I had to act quickly, so I called my lawyer right then and there. We filed an emergency injunction to stop any sale until we could sort out the legal mess. Meanwhile, I also reached out to the bank to freeze her accounts. She'd been transferring money into some secret accounts, and I needed to make sure she couldn't drain everything before I had a chance to get a court order. I felt like I was fighting a war on all fronts. Every move she made, I was one step behind, trying to catch up and counteract her schemes. But the thing that hit me hardest was realizing how much she'd lied to me, how much she'd manipulated the truth. She told me she was just doing this to secure her future, that she was tired of living in my shadow, that she deserved more. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I'd always thought she was ambitious, driven, sure. But now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulator, a schemer, a woman capable of betraying everything we built together. I remember sitting alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling numb. All I wanted was for this nightmare to end, for the truth to come out, for justice. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I could have trusted her so blindly. I felt angry at myself for not seeing the cracks earlier, but mostly I felt furious at her for lying, cheating, stealing, and trying to rip apart my family's legacy. That land meant everything to me, my roots, my history, and now she was trying to sell it behind my back. I started to think about what I'd do if she succeeded. If she managed to sell that land, I'd lose everything. That's when I realized I had to be relentless. I couldn't let her get away with it. I contacted a real estate lawyer who specialized in inherited property. We discussed how to protect the land, possibly placing it in a trust or filing a legal claim to prevent her from selling it without my consent. I was ready to fight for every inch of what was rightfully mine. That night, I also reached out to some contacts in the local land registry office, trying to confirm her plans. I wanted to see if she'd actually filed any paperwork or if she was just bluffing. Turns out, she'd already submitted some documents, but they were incomplete, probably because she was rushing to get everything done before I could stop her. That was a small victory, but I knew it wasn't enough. She was dangerous, clever, and desperate. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. The betrayal, the lies, the stolen money, the threat to my family's legacy, it all felt overwhelming. But I refused to back down. I'd spent my life building something real, something meaningful. I wasn't going to let her destroy it all in a matter of months. I was prepared to go to court, to fight her tooth and nail, to do whatever it took to keep what's mine. The more I fought, the more I realized how deep her deception ran. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. She lied to everyone, even her closest friends, about her career ambitions and future plans. Meanwhile, she was scheming behind my back, playing a long game I hadn't even suspected. It made me sick to my stomach, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to stay strong, stay focused, and keep fighting for what's rightfully mine. Because if I didn't, I'd lose everything, including my trust in her, and possibly the inheritance that's been in my family for over 100 years. Honestly, I don't know how much more I can take. Every day feels like a new battle and I'm exhausted. But I also know that I can't let her win. I have to stay one step ahead, keep fighting, and make sure she doesn't get away with destroying everything I care about. This isn't just about money or land anymore. It's about justice, respect, and protecting what's left of my family's legacy. By this point, I was completely immersed in a war I didn't sign up for. Every morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach, knowing that Sarah was out there, scheming, trying to sell the land behind my back, draining our joint accounts, and pretending everything was normal. The worst part: she had the nerve to act like she was the victim when I confronted her, throwing tantrums, accusing me of mistrusting her, and saying I was just paranoid. But I had the evidence now, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me out of this. I made it my mission to get ahead of her plans. I hired a private investigator, nothing shady, just enough to keep tabs on her movements. I needed to know exactly when and where she was meeting with the estate agent, what she was doing, who she was talking to. Turns out she'd been meeting with the agent multiple times, trying to get the paperwork in order for the sale. I also found out she'd been talking to a few other real estate people, just in case the first one fell through. She was serious about this, way more than I'd realized. While I was gathering intel, I also worked closely with my lawyer. We drafted a cease and desist letter to the estate agent, warning him that any sale of the land without my consent would be illegal. I also filed an emergency court motion to freeze the property's sale until we could settle everything in court. I knew she'd try to push this through quickly, so I had to be faster. I wasn't about to let her snatch my family's land from under my nose. One of the most infuriating moments was when she accused me of trying to control her, saying I was paranoid and jealous. She told everyone, her friends, that I was just insecure and that I didn't trust her. That was a lie, of course. I trusted her once blindly, and look where that got me. Now I was just trying to protect what's mine. I'd never been so angry in my life. It was like she was trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the crazy one. Meanwhile, she kept up the act of being the perfect wife. She'd come home pretending everything was fine, acting like she was the victim, but I saw right through her. She'd throw little jabs, like accusing me of being controlling or possessive, all while secretly plotting her next move. I started to feel like I was living with a stranger, someone who was capable of lying, cheating, stealing, and manipulating her way out of everything we'd built. I also started to dig into her financial records more thoroughly. I wanted to see exactly how much she'd stolen and what she was planning to do with the money. It turned out she'd been funneling funds into a secret offshore account, probably to hide her assets once she sold the land. I was furious. That money was supposed to be our future, not hers to steal. I contacted forensic accountants to help trace the money flow, knowing that I'd need concrete proof for the court. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, hurt, and angry all at once. Every time I caught her in a lie or saw her trying to cover her tracks, it made my blood boil. I'd been so blind, so trusting. Now I felt like I was fighting for my life, trying to hold on to everything that mattered. The land, the savings, my dignity, everything was on the line. One night I sat alone in the dark, staring at the wall, wondering how I got here. How did I go from a happy marriage to this nightmare? I kept asking myself if I should just cut my losses and walk away, but deep down I knew I couldn't let her win. Not like this. I had to see this through, no matter how exhausting it was. I was prepared to go all the way: court, investigation, whatever it took, to stop her from selling that land and stealing our future. I also started reaching out to some trusted friends and family. I needed support, someone who could help me stay grounded. I told a few close friends what was happening, and surprisingly, they were furious. They knew Sarah was manipulative, but they didn't realize how far she'd gone. They urged me to stay strong, to fight for what's rightfully mine. I felt a little bit of hope from that, knowing I wasn't alone in this battle. But I also knew that the biggest challenge was yet to come. She was desperate, and desperation makes people do crazy things. I had to be prepared for her to try doing something even more reckless, maybe trying to sell the land secretly or transferring the money to another account. I kept telling myself to stay vigilant, to keep my eyes on her every move. Because if I let my guard down now, I might lose everything: my land, my money, my peace of mind. And I couldn't let her destroy my life over greed and lies. I had to win, not just for myself, but to protect what my family had built over generations. The days that followed were a blur of tense meetings, late-night strategizing, and constant surveillance. I was on high alert, watching her every move, making sure she didn't slip through my fingers. The court filings were in motion, and my lawyer was doing everything possible to freeze the sale of the land. Meanwhile, I kept pushing to get access to the estate documents, trying to prove that she was acting without my knowledge, that she was trying to pull off a scam behind my back. The worst part: watching her pretend everything was normal, acting like she was the innocent victim in all this. One evening, I got a call from my lawyer. He told me that she'd made a move to transfer the land into her name, an attempt to bypass the court order. That was the moment I realized how far she was willing to go. She was desperate, reckless, and she didn't care about the consequences anymore. I knew I had to act fast. I immediately contacted the court, filing an emergency motion to reverse the transfer and to hold her accountable for her actions. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. At the same time, I enlisted the help of a private investigator to keep tabs on her. I needed to know if she was planning anything else, any new tricks up her sleeve. Sure enough, I caught her meeting with a different real estate agent, someone she hadn't told me about. They were discussing the sale of the land, signing papers, and making arrangements. I was furious. She was trying to push this through at all costs, even if it meant lying, cheating, or breaking the law. Her lies became more blatant. She tell me she was just trying to get ahead, that I was overreacting, and that I was trying to control her. But I wasn't buying any of it anymore. I had the evidence, I had the court orders, and I had her on tape trying to sell the land. The betrayal cut deep. I'd trusted her for so long, and now I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, selfish woman capable of anything to get her way. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was losing my mind some days. The anger, the frustration, the heartbreak, it all threatened to overwhelm me. I'd often sit alone, staring at the documents, the pictures of the land, trying to process how someone I loved could do this to me, how she could betray not only our marriage but also our family's legacy. It was almost surreal. I kept asking myself if I could ever trust her again, if I could forgive her, or if I should just cut my losses and walk away. But I knew I couldn't just give up. Not now. I'd come too far. I had to see this through, for my sake and for the future of that land. I started talking to more legal experts and land specialists, trying to figure out every angle. I learned that I could potentially contest the sale in court, claiming that she'd acted fraudulently and that I had rights to the land as an heir. I was determined to do whatever it took to stop her from getting away with this. One thing that kept me going was the realization that I wasn't alone. My friends and family saw what was happening and stood behind me, offering support and advice. They told me I was strong, that I deserved better, and that I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. Their words gave me a small spark of hope in the middle of all this chaos, but deep down I knew Sarah wasn't going down without a fight. She was desperate and cunning. I caught her trying to transfer more money out of our joint accounts, trying to hide her tracks even further. I realized that I had to be ready for anything. She might try to run, lie, or even threaten me. I was prepared for a long battle, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. But I also knew I couldn't let her win. Not this time. This whole ordeal has changed me. It's made me realize how fragile trust is and how quickly someone you love can betray you when greed and desperation take over. I've learned that I have to be vigilant, that I can't just assume everything is fine because it looks that way on the surface. And most of all, I've learned that protecting what's yours, your land, your family, your integrity, is worth fighting for, no matter how hard it gets. Because if I don't stand up now, I might lose everything I've ever cared about. And I refuse to let that happen. The final stretch of this nightmare has been the hardest for me to process. After all the scheming, lying and fighting, I finally managed to get a court hearing scheduled. It was a tense day. I sat in that courtroom feeling like I was on trial myself, knowing that everything I'd worked for, everything I believed in, was hanging in the balance. Sarah was there, looking smug, trying to act like she was the victim. She brought her lawyer and I had mine. We presented all the evidence, her secret emails, the bank transfers, the fake documents she tried to file. It was a brutal assault on her lies, and I could see her starting to crack. The judge listened carefully, reviewing every piece of evidence I submitted. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she tried to spin a story about how she was just trying to secure her future, that I was controlling and paranoid, and that she deserved to sell the land because I wasn't supportive enough of her ambitions. But I stood my ground, pointing out her deception, her illegal transfers, and her blatant attempt to bypass the court order. I told the judge that this wasn't just about money. It was about protecting my family's legacy and ensuring she didn't get away with stealing from us. After hours of testimony and legal arguments, the judge finally made a ruling. He ordered her to stop all activities related to the sale of the land immediately. He also declared that any transfer or sale made without my consent was null and void. Most importantly, he assigned an independent trustee to oversee the land's management, ensuring she couldn't sell or transfer it again without going through proper legal channels. The relief I felt was overwhelming. I knew I had finally stopped her from doing any more damage. Sarah's face was a mixture of anger and frustration. She yelled, claiming she was being wronged, but the judge wasn't swayed. She left the courtroom in a storm of curses and accusations, but I stayed calm. I knew this wasn't the end. She'd probably try to find another way to fight back, but I was prepared for that. I had the legal backing now, and I had my evidence. I felt a strange sense of victory, but also exhaustion. This battle had taken everything out of me. In the weeks that followed, I worked closely with the trustee and my lawyer to finalize the land's management plan. We made sure it was protected, that no one could just swoop in and take it from us. I also contacted the bank and the forensic accountants to recover some of the stolen money, which was a long shot but worth trying. I didn't expect to get everything back, but I wanted to send the message. You can't just steal from people and get away with it. As for Sarah, she's gone silent. I hear she's trying to rebuild her life, but I don't care. Honestly, I don't care about her anymore. The trust is broken beyond repair. I've learned a lot through this ordeal, about greed, betrayal, and how far some people will go when they're desperate. More importantly, I learned that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours. That family, legacy, and integrity aren't just words, they're worth every battle. Looking back, I realize how much this has changed me. I'm not the same person I was before. I'm more cautious now, more aware of the cracks in the people I trust. But I'm also stronger. I've faced betrayal and come out on the other side. And I want anyone reading this to know that if you're ever in a similar situation, trust your instincts, get the right legal help, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Because at the end of the day, protecting your family's legacy is the most important thing you can do.